One game that we played together was the new Western Legends from Kolossal Games, designed by Lemaitre. I butchered that. It's French, I think. But this game was a Kickstarter from about a year ago, just heading back out to Kickstarters now. And they did just recently do another Kickstarter for the expansion and the base game as well. And this is basically an open sandbox, Wild Wild West game. And that is, I think, the best way to describe it. If you've played Zaya, think of that simplified and not in space, because it's the
Whoa.
West in the 1800s, which was not in space.
It might as well have been space.
It might as well
Very,
be space.
very sandy space.
Yes, very. That's true. It's the same concept. So in this game, you are a cowboy or a cowgirl, just someone who is settling in the West, and
Cow
you
person.
go around. A cow person. It's a person who identifies as a cow.
Correct.
And thank you. And go around, and you can do a multitude of things. You can play poker. You can go to the bank to sell the gold that you panned in the river. You can go get cattle and take them down to the train to send off. Or you can take the cows to competing ranches, but that makes you an outlaw. There's this concept of being an outlaw or what's the opposite of outlaw? Like the good one.
Sheriff.
Sure, but it's not actually the sheriff. You become either an outlaw or the good one. I don't know what it's called. Off the top
A
of my head, but-
sheriff.
Oh, is it the sheriff? Well, no, there actually is a sheriff in the game, and you don't become the sheriff.
Paragon.
You, let's see. It starts with. Anyway, there's two tracks. There's good and bad, and you choose which one you want to do from the actions that you do. And there's different perks for different ones. So if you want to become an outlaw, that's great. If you want to be a nice guy, that's fine. There's other perks as well. One's more for end game scoring. One's more for not end game scoring, for like chipping away at smaller points. And then let's see, other actions you could do. You could play poker. If you want to go to the saloon, you could just party by getting points that way. The game ends after someone hits an X amount of points, and that depends on the length of game you want, either 20, 25, or 30, I believe, and get points in just a buttload of ways, where you are getting points from the cows, you're getting points from selling things, you're getting points from horses that you buy and leveling up, you're getting points from just other aspects. On your turn, you have a few actions that you can do, and those actions are simple, like moving or interacting with a space, or with a location. Each location has their own actions, and that's where the theme fits in, right? If you go to a certain spot in town, you can play poker. There's two separate towns. If you're in the spot where you're playing poker, you can play with poker with anyone in the town. And the way you play poker is everyone also has a hand of cards, and these are their action cards that they do different things. So they'll say action on them or something like that they could play as an action or interrupt another person's action. But these are also face cards, and so you can play poker with them as well, and that's just an action that you can do to win money. And all just super thematic. You can go and arrest people who are there if they're wanted, and you can attack each other if you want. There's a sheriff figure that goes around that you can control to arrest people. There are bandits around that you can go and take care of. All in all, super thematic game, not heavy at all, super easy to pick up and get into. I had a hard time with this game, which I don't really say about games, but this has a happy ending. But I just want to say my first frustrations. So this game plays up to 5, I believe, and we played with 3. And we ended up all doing our own thing and not really interacting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of just spammed the same action. I focused on cows, getting them to the train station. I had a buddy focusing on gold. That was Derek. He was focusing on gold and selling that. He had ended up ultimately winning, not by a ton, but by a fair amount. And then my other friend, Joe, he played poker just over and over again. So all of us are doing the exact same thing over and over again. And it kind of was just blah. Like it wasn't that exciting. Now, at the same time, there was so much theme, and I could understand if you're really into that theme, that would be fun and exciting. And as we were talking about it, I believe this game shines at the full complement of players, where there is more interaction, where there's so many people on the board that you can't just spam the same action because everyone's trying to do the same things. Uh, and I think I agree with that to the point where I was at the game store uh, a few days ago and actually held it in my hands and I was like, I think I'm going to buy this because I could see its potential. I could see how fun it could be because I did enjoy it. There's a store where you can buy different items, like which are just cards which give you abilities, and it has a lot of variety. I could see, but if you're playing with a full complement of players. And so you're not just doing the same thing over and over again. I think that would make it a very fun game. I love Zaya, the space one, because of the different things you can do in the sandboxy nature of that. I feel like it's much harder to do the same thing over and over again in that one, though. And I think I prefer Zaya, but with Western Legends, it's more. I don't know. It's just not as engaging to me off the bat. Now, we are going to play it again very soon with a lot more people, and I'm going to go in with higher expectations because I believe it will be fun at that player count at the 4 or 5 that we get, and I might end up actually purchasing it because of that. It's much more accessible than Zaya. It's a lot easier to get into. Everyone has a fantastic cheat sheet that you can kind of understand what the actions do and what all the scoring does. Overall, it was a good game. I want to give it another chance before I give like my final judgment at it. But I think this is the most negative I've talked about a game on this podcast, even though I liked it.
18 episodes. This is finally your first like middling preview / review.
Where it was like, yeah, it's okay, but I still might buy it. Like I'm not a reviewer, and that's why.
I'm presuming that you played another friend's copy of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 100%.
So why the need to purchase it yourself?
Okay, so where he does have a copy of it, I do play games outside of that game group often, and there is some people like on the weekends that I play with, and he is more of the like during the week game night type thing. But at the end of the day, I didn't purchase it, and I really don't know if I will. But that's why there definitely is an overlap. I tend to be the game collector of our game group.
Oh,
and
sure.
by our game group, I mean the one that I've kind of formed over the past few years and force everyone to come over to. So there are a few that have gotten into games from that and have started purchasing games. But if I like a game, I don't want to be at the whim of another person's copyright. I want to make sure that I have access to it.
You and I are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah,
we're cut from the same cloth. I'm very much the collector of our our game groups.
To my wife's chagrin.
I mean, to like, yeah. I also too like I have the capability of playing with people and obtaining copies, and I've been better at it. But I very much have always wanted to have a copy for myself. With Western Legends, I do actually have that. I have a copy that I punched out and.
Yep.
It sounded like a lot of fun. And it's really interesting because one of the first questions I was going to ask you was, what was your favorite type of action? And realizing that you essentially spam the same type of action to me is like, oh, okay, well, that brings a lot of light down to a game like that where it's like, okay, you go do whatever you want, but if you're all going to stay at this, different corners of the map, what use is of it to play a game where you're essentially doing the same action over and over again, to the point where would you feel like if you were to play it again at 3 players, would you want to instill some sort of house rule where you can only do that action once and then you have to like go do another action before going back to that other one?
I don't know. If I was to play it 3-player again, I would probably just play another game. Like, I don't even want to try it again at 3 players. I mean, I don't know. I did spam that same action over and over again, but it wasn't the most exciting action. It was the one that I was closest to, that everyone has their own abilities as well. Like, their cards are which is your character that tells you kind of a special ability that you get once you hit 5 points. And so mine was kind of catered to being the good guy, so I didn't want to go and do like outlaw stuff. Mm-hmm. It's Wanted and Marshall. Thank you.
I'm staring at a screenshot of it right now.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
I'm helping you out.
Thank you. I would probably play Zaya at 3 players, which I've done, and that usually takes like 2.5 hours. And this game probably took about the same amount. I think it would go shorter for the next plays. I don't think I would play it again at 3 players, but I would definitely play it at 5 players.
So, okay, the reason why you didn't want to go and mess with people's day is why?
Because it wasn't beneficial enough to me to do it. Now I tried. I definitely tried. So Derek was spamming gold and selling gold a lot, and that is a big points earner. And I was so close to going and arresting him or doing the action that took out half of his gold and half of his money, and that would have been like a big detriment to his success, right? And at first I was like, man, that's really annoying to like work super hard just to have someone kind of take it. But honestly, this is a very thematic game where it's telling a story. There's great narrative as to what's happening in the game. And so that ultimately in the end, that's not that big of a deal. But I wasn't close enough. So I tried, and trying again, or he was able to offload that all at the bank and get the points. And then from there on, like it just wasn't worth it points wise. And I would probably try harder next time, knowing what I know now. But I don't. Yeah, it was in that game. I was focused.
It was one of those things where you had to sabotage your own game to make sure that player didn't end up winning, which meant that there was a good probable cause that the third person was just like, oh, well, I'm scot-free to do whatever the heck I want. It seems like that was the type of scenario that you're in. So you were more benefited to just trying to make sure that you could keep up versus spending a turn or two to try to. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Huh? Yeah. Okay.
But honestly, try it. It's a fun game. It's a very accessible and fun game, and I've recommended if you're really wanting a good thematic experience that just like hanging around the table, super easy. It's an easy teach. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I'm excited for you to play it, to hear your opinion of it, and I would recommend trying to do that as soon as possible.
Have you heard of the expansion to this game, Ante-Up?
So I've heard of the expansion. I know it adds there's those 2 tracks, right? And it adds a poker track, which is would be great for my friend who just played poker the whole game. And it also adds a train going through the town. There's already a train track, and I think you can go and rob the train as it's going through town or something like that. I didn't look into the Kickstarter that much because I wasn't really interested in it, and it was over by the time I played the game. So it probably could add a lot, and I think it would be fun. I just don't think I want to sink 150 into that game right now. That I'd have to wait for. I have a hard time, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but I'm having a hard time wanting to shell out money to wait for a game. Sure. And they do a great job at the everything that was available at the Kickstarter is totally available afterward, just for a bit more, which I'm totally fine with, right? I think I'd be willing to pay more later. And so like right now, the Kickstarter stuff from the first Kickstarter run comes in like a box with like a deck of cards or figures or something like that. Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's if you pledged, I think you got those for free or cheaper, and
right.
So that's really cool, because then if you really liked a certain expansion more than the other one, then don't waste your money. You end up kind of making out even. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, man, coming from you, this is a hot take. I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it again. I am, and I'm excited for you to play it. That is Western Legends by Kolossal Games.